Do you ever feel like you're living in the Groundhog Day? You wake up, you go to work, you come home, you repeat the cycle day in and day out. It's almost as if your life is living on a hamster wheel. There's no new novelty, there's no new stimuli that's presented to you throughout your day to day activities. Now, what about your addiction to pornography? Where does that come into play when you're living in this pattern? You know, if your life is lacking new novelty and stimuli in what you're doing, what you're pursuing, and who it is you're becoming, then chances are you're going to seek that stimulus out through other ways. And for us men that have had pornography as a part of our life for years, possibly decades, the only way we know to stimulate ourselves, the only way we know to bring novelty into our life is through the use and consumption of pornography. So if we could recognize that there's a pattern in how we live, and it is these patterns, these repeated behaviors, this repeated habitual way of living that is producing the need and the desire for pornography. If we can recognize and understand that, then we're empowered to actually be able to make the necessary changes. So in today's episode, I want to talk to you about breaking the addictive cycle pattern in your life by introducing new stimulus, new patterns, new objectives, new pursuits in your life. And man, I think the first thing we have to do is we have to be able to recognize what these patterns are. Early on in our work with men that are joining our programs, we ask them to identify the triggers that lead them down the path of consuming pornography. And oftentimes I think when men talk about and think about triggers, they're thinking of an external stimuli. They're thinking of, I saw a beautiful woman at work. I ran into somebody at the coffee shop. Maybe there was an attractive blonde at the gym that internally triggered me. And yes, maybe there are those cases, but I think for most of us, and this has been the evidence that we've been able to pull through all the work that we've done with men. This has been what caused me to struggle with pornography for almost 2 decades of my life, is that there's repeated patterns in the way that we live that produce internal states within us, states that we cannot manage, states that we cannot process and deal with, states of stress, anxiety, fear, isolation, loneliness. So we seek out these external ways to alleviate that. So recognizing what the patterns are. I've heard from hundreds of men, pornography is the first thing they go to when they wake up. Think about that. The minute you wake up, the first thought that triggers in your head is, I need to find some porn just to get myself up and moving throughout the day. Many men I know need it as a way to alleviate stress and a way to prepare themselves for sleep, because without the release at night, they can't sleep. I've spoken with high-performing sales professionals that every time they close a sale, every time they close a deal, they've created the pattern that they celebrate, quote unquote, by using pornography. Many men I know, when they feel rejected from their wives, they'll go into the bathroom, throw some headphones on, and relieve themselves. But these are recognizable patterns that if we can identify, then we're in a position of empowerment to, change those patterns of behavior. So the first step here, man, is to recognize the pattern in which you are consuming pornography. Do an audit. For the last 10, 15 times you consumed pornography, what time of day was it? How were you internally feeling? What were the external factors that caused you to feel that certain way? Was it at a specific time of the day? Was it in a specific location? Was it every time I take my phone or devices onto the bedroom or onto the couch? Or is it every time I go into the bathroom to scroll social media? Recognizing the patterns first is the first step in being able to create new patterns. So once you've done this list here, you have presented in front of you, these are the cycles and patterns at which I consume pornography. Now, next time I'm in these situations and moments, What are the alternative steps that I can take? If I know every time I close a sale at work, I need to go alleviate some stress, then recognize that pattern and come up with an alternative plan. Okay, every time I close a massive deal, I'm gonna put my phone away in the drawer. I'm gonna step outside. I'm gonna breathe in some fresh air. I'm gonna go through some box breathing exercises. I'm maybe gonna journal a little bit. Maybe I'm gonna call and reach out to somebody. But finding alternative ways to alleviate and manage that stress. If every time I take my phone into the bedroom and I lay on the bed and I'm mindlessly scrolling social media, I find myself 30, 45 minutes later triggered in a dopamine deficient state needing pornography. The quickest way to break that pattern is not taking your phone with you into the bedroom. If every time my wife rejects me, I need to find a way to release and alleviate some of this stress and pressure that I'm feeling, then ask yourself the question, why is my wife rejecting me? What role did I play in that rejection? And what are better ways that I can manage and handle this stress? So these are the defensive ways that we handle and process this, right? We recognize what the patterns in our life and our consumption of pornography are first, and then we come up with alternative pathways when we're in those situations. And then what we must do is when we act on those new ways of being, we have to reward and acknowledge ourselves. In Atomic Habits, James Clear talks about the 3 steps of every habit. And there's clear evidence and science supporting this, that every habitual behavior that you have involves these 3 steps. There's the trigger, right? Okay, so triggered every time I take my phone in the bedroom and I scroll social media. Then there's the behavior. That's the habit in and of itself. So I'm triggered because I'm in my bed scrolling social media. The next behavior comes through the habit, through the acting out of pornography, and then the reward comes in the release of the stress or the hits of dopamine that you get. Maybe we can't change those triggers, but we can redirect those triggers. Then we must initiate new behaviors in real time, and then we must reward ourselves through acknowledgement of saying, hey, you're doing a good job here, man. Come up with a better way to reward yourself in those moments. So once again, these are all the defensive ways that we can create new patterns in our life. But what can we do to play offense? To tap into some neuroplasticity, to create new neural pathways and new connections within our brain. In the month 3 of our program, we walk guys through weeks of proactive steps to break patterns, to break cycles, to cause new novelty, to cause new stimuli in their life. A handful of them are brushing your teeth with the opposite hand. You know, we're so ingrained in doing things a certain way. And so much of this is operating and it is beneath the surface of our conscious awareness. But instead of brushing our teeth right-handed, every morning we brushed it left-handed. Now our brain is forced to think and our brain is forced to operate in a different way. Eating meals with the opposite hand. Taking alternative paths to work or to destinations that we visit on a regular day. If we've been driving the same path for the last 15 years, and then when we get home from that path, the first thing we do is consume pornography, changing the route will literally change the pattern at which you're living. You can take it steps deeper. You can learn new physical skills. You can embark down learning new languages, causing your brain to think and work and operate in a new, different way, breaking that chain, breaking that hamster wheel cycle, getting you out of the Groundhog Day of living. Because if your day-to-day life isn't bringing you joy and fulfillment, then yes, you are going to struggle in breaking this addiction. So get outside of your shell. Get outside of the day-to-day way that you've been living for the last decade plus. Begin to inject new stimulus, begin to inject new patterns, begin to inject new learning, force you to grow as a human being. And that can only be done by doing things that you're not currently doing. And this is going to be a massive part of your success. And I can guarantee that. It's going to play one role. You'll need community. You'll need accountability. You'll need support. And more importantly, you need a vision for the life that you can live without pornography. So I want to help you in creating that here today. If you click the link down there in the show notes or visit rebuildsrecovery.com/vision, I put together 5-step training for you to get clear and identify the man that you can become without pornography, because it must start there. You must be able to envision a life without porn before you can step into it and create it for yourself. So if you want to get your hands on this training, visit rebuildsrecovery.com/vision. We'll give the training to you guys absolutely free. But breaking the addictive pattern cycle in your life is going to be a fundamental step in your recovery, in your pursuit and path to creating freedom from pornography in your life. Guys, I hope this episode was valuable to you. If it was, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you do not miss any of our upcoming episodes. And if you're getting value out of these guys, you can take a moment and leave us a 5-star rating and written review, and meaning the absolute world to me. But your host, Coach Frank Rich here, Rebuilt Recovery, the Rebuilt Man. We love you guys. See you in the next one.